Hi all, my name is Joey Rees. Welcome to the Practice Center, where we practice all things
like mindfulness, forgiveness, and attitudinal healing.
I'm here with my dear friend Judith. Judith, you are part of the international team. So I would love for you to share with everybody where you are and then introduce a little bit about yourself related to forgiveness work and every other part of your life that you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay, wonderful. So hi folks, I'm Judith. I'm originally from the Netherlands, as you probably hear by my accent. But I've been living in Spain for the past 11 years already. So quite some time away from my home country. And before that, I've lived 5 years in Argentina. Not feeling so Dutch anymore for a long time. So yes, I've been working in the field of forgiveness since 2016, mostly focused because I went through a forgiveness process myself that I struggled quite a lot with.
Yeah.
And then I thought, why not share my own process with others? Because I'm sure there's more people in the world that struggle with this kind of stuff. Why not share it? So based on my own struggles and journey, I developed my own forgiveness process.
Was this at the same time, because you've been doing leadership training for a long time as well? So
yes,
in the timeline, you were doing leadership training, and then you developed the forgiveness training. Can you kind of talk about how the two work together, or if they not, and what transitions you made around your like facilitation and training work?
Oh yeah, definitely they connect, because I think that in the personal leadership work that I do, the focus is on how can you become the protagonist in your life, like the main player in your own story, all the time in all kinds of things. Not necessarily when there is a big story going on, but in daily practices.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I've been doing for a long time already. So how can you see the world more from a point of view from, okay, what can I do? Where is my responsibility? What is possible? All those conscious choices. And then forgiveness seems such a logical next thing. I think it took me a while to put it into something that's easily digestible for others, because it's quite abstract, right?
Right.
But it flows so naturally from one into the other. So I'm still doing both, but it doesn't feel as something totally different. Yeah, I think that, well, also for myself, it's so easy when things go not as you wish in life to blame others for that. And I think that's the biggest part where things go wrong, or at least that people lose that side of that you can do something about it yourself, right? So how can you keep the focus on yourself? How can you go back to what is your core and what is important for you, and then make choices that really resonate with yourself?
Mm.
So I think that that's one of the common things. Another common thing is that we all struggle to really feel the feelings that we all have,
Yes.
or we judge them, that we think we shouldn't feel them, or I'm not supposed to feel this, or whatever, which is not helping either, because we can't get really through the core of whatever is going on if we're not allowing ourselves to feel whatever is going on.
Yeah.
Well, I think that growing up in the Netherlands in quite a dysfunctional family, emotions were not important. Nobody was interested in them, not whatsoever. So never never really got in touch with my emotions there.
Can you give me an
Simply because
example of that? How do you know that nobody cared?
In my family, I'm talking about, right? Not for all the Netherlands in general.
No,
but
no, no. I'm interested only in you.
Yeah. So in my family, whenever there was feeling going on, whether it's sadness or fear or even anger, there was no space to show it or share it, or to express it. It was
What were you
very
told
clear
about it?
that they didn't matter. That the only people in the family who were supposed to have those emotions, and not so much in words, was probably my father. Not even
How do you
anybody
know
else in
that?
the family.
Or
Because
how did that get shown to you? Like it, because I mean, we do a lot of soaking in through observation, right? I just want to be able to put words to that, so somebody out there can go, that's what I see. So this is the language around that.
Yeah, I think that when I was very little, it was more like with physical things that happened. So, for example, if I really fell or hurt myself and I was crying about it, I was told, "Hey, what are you crying about? Don't be such a sissy," or something like that.
Mm,
Even when bad things happened. But as a child, you don't know how to distinguish whenever something physical happens or something emotional happens.
oh my gosh.
So, whenever I got scared or sad or whatever, you just think, "Oh, I'm not supposed to show this because I know what's going to happen then. My father's getting angry at me." So I just always ignored those feelings. And as a kid, I learned that. But when I became a teenager, it was already such a habit that I just always shoved things down, all those feelings.
Yeah.
And it took me quite some years to get to the idea of, hey, what, these feelings are still there. All these feelings that I haven't been able to process in my teenage years are still here. They're bothering me and they're blocking me from being happy and maybe being everything that I could be. And it wasn't until I moved to Buenos Aires that I really felt that that shifted. But then I was already like 28 years old, right? So there's a gap. Until that moment, I just ignored them. I shoved them down. I pretended that probably I was happy, but there was lots of things going on the inside.
Yeah.
But since I didn't really feel the place that I could express it, uh, I didn't. I simply didn't. When I moved to Buenos Aires, I noticed that people deal with emotions in a different way there. So sometimes I shared something about my story in facts because I didn't share my emotions. And then they would say to me, "Oof, if that would happen to me, I would feel like this." And then I
Oh,
said,
wow.
"Yes, that's exactly how I'm feeling." So they were pulling the words out of me rather than me saying it proactively. And that gave such a good feeling. So I thought, hey, this is interesting. People here are interested in my feelings. They would feel the same things as I am feeling. So this feels good to share a little bit more about what's going on my inside.
So interesting. So you really felt heard there
Yes, for the
and
first time.
seen. Yeah. Oh,
Yes,
interest. Oh, that's so interesting.
still took some years to get to that. But
Mhm.
I'm noticing that in the beginning, when I was in Buenos Aires, I didn't speak the language that well from the beginning. I couldn't find a job because of that reason. So I had a lot of time to think. And that's the trickiest thing that can happen, or the best thing, depends on how you see it. But then all the feelings were coming after me.
Yeah.
So I wasn't busy anymore. I didn't have so much distraction. And then suddenly the feelings, it was like a big wave coming over me. Like I couldn't resist. I was starting to feel so angry. Angry was the main emotion that was coming up. But
Yes.
anger, real anger, like rage, like yeah, really real anger. And of course I had a big judgment on, oh, I'm not supposed to feel angry, or this is not what people expect from me, or I don't like myself being angry, or I don't want to turn into my father, even worse. Lots
Right.
of judgment. So I still didn't show it. I didn't share it with anyone, but on the inside there was so much going on.
What can you
And
describe a little bit of the internal landscape? So you feel this rage. What was
yeah,
happening to you inside? What was
like a big hurricane in my stomach, in my belly, like superficial breathing. When I woke up in the morning, I was exhausted, like I fought a big fight in my sleep, something like that. Like my muscles were hurting, those kind of signs. But also, I think that I learned myself the habit that whenever I'm upset, I go for a run and then come back and feel better. That wasn't working anymore.
mm,
So in the beginning, I tried to run it off like with 5K or 10K. But since that wasn't working anymore, I started to run 21K. And then finally, I signed up for the whole marathon. And I was still feeling angry. And I thought, oh shit, this is not going in the right direction. So the normal tools that would help me settle down or take perspective, didn't work anymore.
we are like conditioned almost to programmed almost to say that there's some coping mechanisms that are healthy and there are other coping mechanisms that are not. And although there might be some truth to it, what you just explained was Girl, you were running 21 miles to try to run away from your feelings.
Exactly. I was running from them and it didn't work. It didn't
And
work.
it didn't work.
Sure.
And I couldn't eat enough food. There wasn't enough drink for me to feel better.
No, nothing. There comes a point in time that you realize nothing is working. I tried everything, not only running, other coping mechanisms too,
Right.
but it didn't work. And so I couldn't fool myself any longer. That was the fun piece. So I was observing myself getting more angry and more angry. I wasn't showing it to the world, but I was very conscious that I don't want to turn into this angry and bitter person in my life.
Yeah.
So I needed to do something different, although I didn't know what exactly or what it would look like, but I needed to do something different. And that was the change of my forgiveness journey.
Was this a slow realization, or did you have like a moment or a day of reckoning?
Yeah, so after running the marathon, still feeling the anger that I was feeling, I was running one day and I thought, I'm completely lost. I need to do something different. So at that moment, it was like a light bulb moment. I think this is not going well.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it so much through these months of training. I only realized that I was still angry. And then suddenly it hit me that I think, no, my coping mechanisms are not helping me anymore. I need to do something different.
Wow.
And then I started journaling a lot. So I started writing. I wrote like, I don't know how many booklets full of thoughts, feelings, things that happened to me, things, everything. I threw everything out on paper. So I still wasn't talking, right? It was still a very private matter for me.
Right.
I think the talking came years later.
Were you a journaler before then, or this is something that you just decided to try?
Yeah, it felt natural. So my body was asking for it. Get a journal, write it down. So it wasn't like a very conscious choice. It was just, okay, my intuition say, take a booklet, start writing, and then trust your arm. It was more like that.
Girl, that's a skill, or you were born with something that a lot of people don't have, which is the willingness to listen to your intuition. I mean, and to be guided.
But it was quite a solitary process, and that's what changed throughout the years that came afterwards. So I did it by myself. I didn't ask for help, which was one of my coping mechanisms, not asking for help. So I did it by myself, and then said, yeah, there must be more people in the world who struggle with this. Why don't we share this kind of things more openly? Yes. And that was like the light bulb moment that I thought, we need to start sharing these things and make it more accessible for people to talk about feelings, struggles, resentments, whatever is going on in your life. Like, it's normal. It is normal.
It is normal.
Right? Yeah. And then having to speak about it, that was quite scary for me, because that's definitely not what that I was used to.
So tell me about the first time you spoke about it, or what was that? So can you bring us there?
Oh yeah, scary. Very scary. Yeah, because I was very afraid of judgment, or that people don't take it serious, or that they laugh at you, or whatever might come up, right? But at the same time, it felt very true to myself and who I am. So I know that I needed to do it to invite others to come into that same space. Because if it's scary for me, it's probably scary for anyone that might be willing to open up for the first time, right? So
how did that first speaking out loud happen? Was it a formal setting? Were you hired to do it? Did you get a group together? How did you do that?
No, I think it was with friends.
Okay.
That was the first time. And then it was later on in programs.
So it was kind of impromptu. You were like, I'm going to just be emotionally honest here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I like real things a lot. So it doesn't need to be pretty. It needs to be real. And I wasn't being completely real, because I was hiding a piece of me that was going on the inside, with a lot of depth and a lot of solitude. And I thought, no, if you want the real me, then you get this other piece too, which is deeper and more abstract maybe, and sometimes sad, or looking for your way in life or whatever. Yeah, that's part of me too.
You know, that's, I don't, you know how learning is comes in waves and it's unfolding. And I know that I've had these realizations before, but I think the biggest one that I remember in 2021, as I was sitting there going, I don't know that I've ever been honest in a relationship.
Mm.
You know, and you and I
Yeah.
talked a little bit of some of that as I was dating over the summer and trying to just show up really honest, because I would, and I don't think anybody would have in my friend group or at work would have ever said that. But I know that in my relationships with people, having babies with people and being married, I don't think I ever showed up as an honest Joey.
Mm.
And even now I go, what do I mean when I say that? And it's hard to kind of articulate, because of course I was there and I was doing the things. And, you know, so when you say I wasn't really honest, you're talking about like emotional exposure. But then there are people who that's too much. Like, I don't want to be sitting here being emotionally dumped on by you. So there's a delicate balance, right? That happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably not a matter of starting to share your whole private life or your emotions with everybody you
Right.
come across with, but choosing very carefully who you think can handle that kind of truth
Yeah.
with people you feel hurt or seen by or loved by. Uh, but sometimes you need to be willing to take that risk,
Yeah.
I think. So in my relationship, I didn't show up with my full self in the first half of our relationship, I think,
Will you say more
because
about that? I want to, yeah, I would
yeah,
love to hear
oh
more
yeah,
about that.
definitely. Yeah, because I think that I was still in the middle of this. Well, I didn't even begin with my own forgiveness process. So I met my partner, and then I was still very in my coping mechanisms, like being very independent, not asking for help, not showing vulnerability, like being the strong, independent, self-sufficient woman.
Yeah.
Thinking that I was needing a lot of freedom and space, right? And part of that might be true, right? But
Right.
it was more like a big defense mechanism, because I find it scary as hell to commit into a relationship where people might be able to hurt you again, like I was hurt before.
Yeah.
So no way that that was going to happen. So we met, and then after less than a year, we moved to Buenos Aires. So then comes the question, okay, what do we do? Because we weren't living together in the Netherlands. So one evening we had to speak about how do we do this, right? How are we going to move? And until that moment, we never spoke about getting married or being serious or getting kids or whatever, because I always was avoiding these topics, and he probably too,
Yeah.
right? He had the same coping mechanisms. So I said that evening, well, I would love to go to Buenos Aires, but there's one thing. I don't want to live in the same apartment. And let's see how that falls, right? And then he said, okay, if that's what you want, let's do that. So we moved to the other side of the planet in two different places, lived there for 5 years in that same mode.
And
Not
you stayed
always being,
together the whole time.
yes. Yes,
Wow.
that's the good news.
Yeah.
Then we moved to Madrid and we asked ourselves the same question: do we repeat the same model? Do we change it? And I was the one that said, no, let's repeat it. So again, we looked for two apartments and we continued until it stopped working, because we grown far apart, lots of distance. And it was because none of us, starting with me, didn't want to show the vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we finally start talking, we noticed that we've both been feeling very lonely in the relationship the last few years.
So how long had you guys been together at that point?
7 years.
7 years, and you were feeling
Yes.
lonely in the relationship. There's so many people who identify with that. How many married couples feel lonely? That was the worst feeling I remember having, driving home, knowing that my husband or my partner was inside and I'd have to sit in the car going, because I had to be alone in this space with another person. And that felt so heavy. Yeah. So how did that conversation go?
Yeah, well, then we had to really show up who we are really, right? Because then we couldn't hide behind our coping mechanisms anymore, because they they didn't work. So we needed to start speaking about how we feel, what it is that we need, both for the first time.
Yeah.
And the reason why we probably avoided that is because we both thought, yeah, but he fell in love with this self-sufficient, independent, free woman. If I now suddenly show my real emotions, then what is he going to think of me, right? And
Yes.
probably in his mind, it was going on in the same way. So it was scary, but very necessary. And the relationship completely shifted after that. And it became more real. So that's way better. Now we talk about the emotions. We help each other when we struggle. So, like, yeah, what you hope for, probably what I hope for in a relationship.
Wow. Had you ever thought about what you hoped for when you first met him?
No idea.
Yeah.
I was just taking it one day at a time. I was never thinking about long-term things in any way, not with work, not with relationship. I just take life as it comes.
Yeah.
But here we are, like 17 years later.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I
Well,
hope that that feels hopeful for other folks who feel lonely in a relationship, that we don't have to blow stuff up. Like that's my answer to stuff. Then we break up. I mean,
yeah.
it's not working, we break up. Or if it's not working, I move. If it's not working, then I cut it off. But no, through some grace, you can kind of
Yeah.
share your needs, right? Share your hopes. And
But what I also needed to learn in the same process is that not seeing him as responsible for my happiness.
Mhm.
And I think that in the beginning, I didn't have that clarity, or at least it got better over time. That
Yeah.
that's my job. I need to make myself happy. So
Yeah.
how do I do that? So I needed to learn a lot about how to treat myself with kindness. What is it that I actually need? What makes me happy? And then the relationship turns into something different, because then it becomes the icing on the cake, but not something that you need on a daily basis for your own
Yes.
happiness.
Yeah. That's the same kind of vetting process with work too, right? It's not the job's fault that you're miserable in that job or that kind of work, right? Somehow we chose that. And at some point, some of us forget that we chose that, right?
Yeah.
So you went through similar kind of pattern with your work, because when I met you, you were like full on, buttoned up, professional in the leadership space, going out and speaking and training hundreds of people at a time. Right. And there was some like desire in you to make some shifts. Can we talk about
Yeah.
that time frame? Because that's when you and I were in the similar orbit, and that I'm so thankful for.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Yes, I think that I was feeling exhausted of being in front of big audiences, of traveling a lot. And I think that sometimes it's crazy, right? That the more people you are with, the lonelier you feel on the inside.
Yes.
At least that's something that really is true for me. I prefer so much more having a one-on-one conversation, or maybe with two people, and then it becomes already a crowd for me. So
Yes. Yes.
and doing trainings for hundreds of people, yeah, you can imagine what feeling that provoked in my, yeah, inside myself. So I felt quite disconnected and lonely in that role, even if I pretended not to feel that. But if I'm honest, I did feel it. So when I started to experience smaller groups, like with the forgiveness work, I felt so much more like myself. I felt way more connected to others and to myself. I didn't feel the need to pretend so much or to entertain people or whatever.
Mhm.
So it felt like a relief. And I
Yeah.
think that I had been longing for that shift for a long time already, but I didn't see how to make that happen until it happened.
Yeah.
Right? Really, yeah, saying to myself, I'm not happy in this thing that I'm doing. That's probably the biggest struggle, because there comes a lot of judgment in my mind at those moments, because I think, yeah, people who die for such a job,
Yeah.
why are you not being happy? You're not being grateful or whatever, like judgments on the experience. But then, of course, I'm not validating my real emotion. But that was like the first few, well, maybe even months or years, that was my inner dialogue.
Mhm.
Most people would love to have this kind of job. Who are you to not be satisfied right now? So I continued, right? But yeah, until the moment that I couldn't do it anymore because I was simply exhausted by it. And then saying no, that's another big thing. So okay, where do I start? Can
Mhm.
someone explain to me how I do this? Right?
Right.
So it took me another some time to gather the courage to see, okay, what is it that I truly want right now? How can I be true to myself and my beliefs and my feelings? And what does it take to really say that no? What, because if I don't say no, what is the consequence of not saying no?
Mhm.
And what do I want to say yes to that I'm not saying yes to right now? But it was a process. It wasn't a very quick one.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so I think that when COVID hit, it was for me somehow, yeah, this sounds a little awkward because it's such a negative thing, but it brought good things to my life because it became really obvious what are the things that I want to focus on, where do I find joy, where do I find that I have something to really contribute to the world, and I can do it from home, which is also sometimes nice after having traveled so much for work. So I find a new balance in that. So yes, what I enjoy doing is one-on-one work, small group work, meaningful work, forgiveness, self-compassion, that kind of stuff, uh, and not too much.
Yep. Not too
Yeah,
much.
not too
Yeah.
much, and that's always going to be a challenge. I know because I am enthusiastic. I have a lot of energy. I want to do a good job, so I always have to say to myself, "Is this really what you want right now?"
Yeah.
And then give myself some time to think about it before I jump into yes
Yeah.
mode too quickly. Well, for me, forgiveness is finding back your inner peace, really getting back to who you were before all the shit happened. If I can say that on camera.
Yes, you can. On this camera, you can.
Yes. Yeah. All that turmoil, all that hurricanes that sometimes go through your body whenever things happen. Yeah, get rid of that and finding back your inner peace. So I think what forgiveness brought for me in my life is that after a lot of turbulence, I can still see the world through a soft lens with a soft heart, with love in my body and in my heart. And every day I try to do my best to choose to see the best in people, also in myself. That's sometimes more challenging, but see the world through more love and compassion and not as an embittered or angry person.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah, so I
So
think it's the soft heart that I'm most happy with, that forgiveness has brought me.
the soft heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't armor up. I did that for a while, but didn't make me happy. So now I'm back to the soft heart. Feels way better.
Hmm. I dig
Most
that.
definitely.
So how can
Yeah.
people learn from you?
Well, of course, I give this training forgiveness workshop called Letting Shit Go, which is based on my own life journey. And I put it into a workshop, which is now online, of course, due to COVID. So that's something that I can offer people. I will be planning the next one probably in the end of February or March. I will announce that on my website and on Facebook soon. So, and I will share it on the Practice Center website as well. And I also have another training which I do with a friend of mine called Joe, which is called Meet Your Inner Ally, which is more about recognizing our inner dialogue, then transforming it into one that's not so critical about ourselves, but more self-compassionate, which is also based on our own stories, of course, and
Hmm.
still working in progress. Yeah, definitely, because sometimes people confuse forgiveness with reconciliation,
Hmm.
right? And in Mindful Forgiveness and also in my program, we clearly say that that two different things. So for me, the forgiveness is about finding back your inner peace. It's your journey, your inner journey, to find that peaceful feeling again. But then, as soon as you start interacting with some people around you, then you think, oh, and now what, right? So it comes down to making a conscious choice what you want to do moving forward, whatever you choose, whether it's renewing or releasing, how can you maintain your inner peace?
Yes.
So if it's renewing, what do you need to do? What new habits do you need to create? What new boundaries do you need to set in place to make sure that you keep your inner peace in that renewed relationship?
Yes.
And if that's not possible, maybe then it's a good choice to release that relationship from your life. But sometimes we release without having done the forgiveness work, and then it doesn't bring us inner peace.
Interesting, right? Because sometimes we think just cut them off and then you'll be fine. And yet here we are with all kinds of people cut off from our lives and we still don't feel fine.
Yeah. So for me, the forgiveness comes first. Find back your inner peace. And once you found it, you get to choose if you want to renew or release the relationship with this person, and how to do it from a place of choice, conscious choice, but also from a place of peace.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Judith, what else do you want to share with the entire world that we have not covered?
Well, I think that what I see a lot, so part of my Letting Shit Go program is around self-compassion. And I think for me, that's such a thing that will probably, until the end of my days, be the thing that I will be working on for me. But I see so many people struggle with that. That's definitely something that we can build on and share more of in the coming years together and as a world, I hope. Yeah. Because the moment you realize that you can give yourself whatever you've been looking for outside, then it gives you so much more power to create your own happiness, your own inner peace, your sense of belonging to yourself, maybe even, right? Yes. And you always have the answers in you. You just have to see it in a different way. And from that place of self-compassion, forgiveness is the most logical thing to give yourself. So it's all related for me. And I think that that's something I would really love to continue sharing with people.
Beautiful. So how can people get a hold of you? What's your preferred method?
Well, they can go to my website or my email. I'm also on Facebook. So my website is, I will send it later, but it's u-turncoaching.com.
Okay. Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time to share your story and to talk about how you're changing the world. It is an honor to be your friend. And as a side note, I just need to let people know that the colors that I'm wearing today is because of you. Those are, yeah. And this is how I see you, is like in a dark landscape or a dark backdrop. You are this shiny, bright, like ball of energy and color that you bring, not just to me, but everybody else at the practice center. When they talk about you, it's like, oh, Judith, like you can see them light up with your light when they talk about you. So you are a spectacular human on this planet. And I feel very, very blessed to know you. And I can't wait till we're in the same space. So either I'm in Europe or you're here in Hawaii. So I can't wait for that this year.
Me too. I'm feeling very grateful too. And I'm sure we will meet on whatever place of the planet soon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this.
Thanks, interview. Judith. Okay. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.